you're under eating, your body's going to be turning pretty quickly to your muscles to start burning that as energy so that it can perform those needed functions that we have just to stay alive.
Hey guys, it's Corey from Redefining Strength. Welcome to this episode of the Fitness Hacks Podcast. So in this episode, I want to dive into why it's not just about working hard and how to actually see your hard work pay off, and I'll give you 4 tips. I'm then going to chat with Michelle about the science behind why we might need to eat more to lose fat. I then want to talk about greens and our micronutrient intake and the benefits that we can really see when we increase that micronutrient intake and put more of an emphasis on it. And then I want to dive into whether or not we should use intervals or reps and when intervals might actually be better than just counting reps. And finally, I want to end with why we need to stop avoiding those frustrating coordination movements that really challenge our balance, because as hard as they can be, as much as we sometimes don't want to make ourselves uncomfortable in that way, it can be really key, especially as we get older. So let's dive right in. It's not just about working harder. It is truly about training and working smarter. Trust me, if it was all about hard work, a lot of people would be a lot further along than they actually are. Unfortunately, we can't out-exercise or out-diet time. So when it comes to actually seeing results build, what does it take? It takes intentionality, it takes focus. We have to lay out a clear plan. We can't just work harder, because if you think about that, you could work hard in the wrong direction. You could be digging a hole the opposite way you want to be going, right? And you could be putting in a ton of hard work, which leads to a ton of frustration when you're not seeing the results that you want actually building. So we have to give ourselves that accurate plan in place, that real roadmap to results if we want our hard work to pay off. Because hard work without direction is going to get us nowhere and potentially even set us back. Trust me, I've been there. So I wrote down 4 tips I think are really helpful in terms of getting our hard work to truly pay off efficiently and even see better results faster without necessarily having to do more or just work harder. Because it really is that efficiency of work that adds up. So if you feel like you've been working hard and you're frustrated by your results, stop and think, do I have a clear plan? Am I just stringing things together, trying to do more, cutting out rest, making myself feel more worked, restricting more foods, doing this hard work without knowing if everything I'm actually doing has a purpose? Because everything you design in your plan should have an intent. Will it always work out the way we want? No. Sometimes it is an experiment to see what works for us. Sometimes we're experimenting with a low carb ratio or a high fat ratio, right? Which would be the same thing, usually lower carb and higher fat. But we're experimenting with different things to see how they impact us. And in that experimentation though, we want to have a purpose. We want to have done our research. So if you're including a move, you're not just including it because it's hard or it's the best, you're including it because, hey, I am trying to train X, Y, and Z thing, right? I'm trying to target my posterior chain. I want to be lifting heavy to build muscle. All these things are key. So I'm going to include a deadlift and I'm going to include the sumo variation with the barbell because I also want to focus more on my legs than I do even my back. And I know I can do the barbell to move more weight, right? So you want to have a purpose to it. And you can do your research and even see opposing viewpoints to really decide the why something might work and why it might not even work, to be well aware of it before you implement and test it out. But you want everything to have a purpose, even if you aren't sure if it will match your exact needs and goals until you really have sort of gone through a progression with it or gone through the macro ratio. But you want that purpose so then you can assess at the end, hey, how did this actually work out? Okay, it didn't work out the way I thought, and this is why it might not have, so how can I make the changes to help myself move forward? But you're giving yourself that clear purpose and intentionality with your training because everything is really planned out. But you need that plan in place, okay? So as hard as it is sometimes to pause, to stop, and even assess where am I going, how do I get there, you need to do that, okay? And then you need those checkpoints along the way. While building that healthy lifestyle really is a forever process, right? We're never done with this. We can't go back to what we were doing when we make the changes to see results. Things are constantly evolving. You're not doing one thing forever. And so the idea of just telling ourselves forever generally doesn't motivate us to get started. And then it also can make us worry, like, how do I know if something's working? Oh no, when do I stop and switch? So just set those clear end dates and checkpoints. No, you're not done, but by giving yourself that point, you know you're going to assess that, it can help you trust in the process for that long. It gives you a set time frame where you can allow results to build or see if they're not. Often when we don't see results for a week or even 2 weeks, we're like, we're plateaued, we're never gonna see results again. But really a true plateau is 4 weeks with absolutely no change. That means you didn't see strength gains, you didn't see yourself able to do one more rep more easily. It means the scale didn't change, there was no change in your pictures. It's really no change at all. Often we don't wait that long. So set those end dates to allow yourself to better trust in the process and know at that point you're going to assess your plan and see if the things that you included with a purpose are actually working out the way you want, or if maybe some of the research you did as to why they might not work is actually proving true. But those checkpoints allow you to assess and step back and then make changes, okay? Then have different ways you're measuring progress. We can't just measure in one way because often we won't see progress in that one way as frequently as we like. Progress is never linear, but the more ways we can see that our habits are actually paying off, the more we're going to trust in the process and allow results time to snowball. So if you don't see those changes on the scale, try taking measurements, try taking pictures, allow yourself to see body recomp in different ways because the scale won't tell the full picture. Even track your progress in your workouts, in your implementation of the daily habits, tracking your macros. By celebrating some of these other wins and acknowledging the progress you're making in these other areas, you can help yourself stay consistent to allow results to snowball in the way that you actually want. If you are seeing your lifts go up in your training sessions, if you are able to run further, faster, right, you know that you're doing the things in your workouts that will ultimately also pay off in terms of your weight loss results. If you're doing the things of consistently logging and tracking, you know it's going to pay off. So set outside measurements that aren't just focused only on your ultimate goal, but are even focused on complementary habits, okay? Next, commit to learning if something isn't working. So while you're implementing your plan, constantly be researching like, hey, how does this all work together? Is this strategically really designed for me? You know, why might this not work for me if I'm not seeing the results I want? But constantly be learning and assessing what you've even programmed. Not to make a change, because too often we want to jump ship if we don't see immediate results, but be learning and see the other perspectives even, so that if something isn't working out the way you plan, you can sort of be aware of why it might not work and what else could be implemented because you're not seeing the results that you want. So constantly be learning and assessing. And a bonus tip that I really want to share is that working harder doesn't mean doing more, okay? Working harder should mean focusing on our programming and giving our all to it, okay? So when you have this plan in place, don't go around it or say, well, more is better, right? So I'm gonna cut my calories lower. No. Just follow the plan. Make your working harder say, hey, how exact can I hit these ratios? How exactly can I follow this program? How precise can I be in everything that I'm implementing? Make your hard work focused, because that will allow you to stay consistent. So make sure that you're not just working harder, but actually training and fueling smarter to see the results that you deserve. I'm excited to have Michelle on today to talk about how we need to eat more to lose fat. While we think, calories in versus calories out, creating that calorie deficit if we want to lose weight, this simple equation doesn't really get to the heart of what we need to do if we want to see results. So I'm excited to dive in with Michelle. Michelle, let's talk about the science behind actually eating more to lose fat. Can we explain why this might be the case?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's just a lot more nuance to that simple equation of to lose weight, I need to burn more than what I am intaking. And a lot of that has to do with what are we actually using our energy or our calorie intake for. So, for example, there's going to actually be four main areas that make up your metabolism and how you're utilizing that energy intake. And it kind of goes in tiers. So there's going to be areas that we spend more energy than others. And to start, it's going to be our resting metabolic rate. And that's really just the area that we spend the most energy. About 60 to 70% of our caloric intake is being spent there. And that is just maintaining our body, keeping you alive, making sure you're breathing, organs are functioning, blood circulation is happening. That's where the majority of our energy is going. Then the next thing, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, after that, it's going to be exercise. Actually, it's not. The next area is actually our non-exercise activities. So which is called meat, your meat movement throughout the day. So this is you just doing day-to-day tasks, fidgeting. If you're someone like me that talks with your hands, those type of movements are going to actually be expending calories. And they're movements that you don't think about. You're not thinking about these things throughout the day, but you just naturally do them. Then you're going to be hitting exercise. So of course, we all know exercise is a great thing. It's good for your body, good for your heart. We all want to be able to build muscle, but when it comes to the grand scheme of things, it's actually not the highest, most burning caloric option that we have. And then lastly, we do have the thermic effect of food. So for you just eat food, you are going to have to use calories to break it down, use energy to be able to get the nutrients from that. So that is really where our energy tends to go after we have consumed it.
It's kind of crazy to think about because we put so much of an emphasis on exercise. And we always hear, and I feel myself saying this a lot, you cannot exercise your diet, but it's definitely something we need to consider. And when we're addressing all the different factors, we want to think about just moving more for our body. We want to think about the thermic effect of food, not just the calories being burned from exercise, especially because most of our calories are being burned just to survive. So, how can we actually impact our resting metabolic rate? And how does this play into the fact that if we're eating too little, it might be sabotaging our weight loss results?
Yeah, so when you eat too little for what your body actually needs, you are putting your body into a stress mode. Your body is being like, oh, wait, hold up, what is happening right now? And part of the issue with that is your body is always going to have a hierarchy of needs. So first and foremost, your body's job is to keep you alive, to keep you functioning. If you are extremely under eating, your body is not going to be worried about running those other metabolic pathways. So for example, I hear this a lot from clients where they're like, I've noticed my hair isn't growing very well, my nails seem not to be growing, or I'm really struggling to lose this weight. Well, part of that is oftentimes because they're not eating adequately enough. Because your body is not going to be worried about making your hair look, soft and smooth and healthy, or making your nails look super nice. It's going to be more worried about, like, hey, this person is under eating. I need to make sure that I'm still able to circulate that blood. My heart is still functioning. My lungs are still functioning. I'm able just to breathe day to day. So you are automatically going to be less efficient at running all those metabolic factors. And that, I mean, it's up to 70% of your energy intake goes to that area. So if you are all under eating, and I think I need to emphasize, because obviously, end of the day, you need to be in a calorie deficit. But when I'm talking under eating, I'm saying you are under eating by 500 calories or more. That is really when we start to see these issues tend to occur. And so when that happens, your body is not going to be like, "Oh, hey, we can burn fat today because we are being underfed, and obviously this person is trying to lose weight." Your body's not thinking that. Your body's thinking, "Whoa, what is this person doing? We need to make sure that we are utilizing and becoming more efficient at utilizing the nutrients that are coming in so that we can ensure that we are able to function."
It's thinking about it as if you're giving your body too little, your body is going to protect itself. And so we think, my metabolism is broken, and it's not broken. It's just compensating. It's just adapted because it's like, hey, we've got to put the things that are most important, AKA survival, first. And therefore, in a weird way, yes, we're in a calorie deficit, but our body is doing what it can to not make that calorie deficit actually a deficit.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to make it so you may think you're in a deficit, but your body's actually closing that gap because you aren't properly feeding it. And there's a big difference between surviving and thriving. So when you are under eating drastically, you are putting your body in more of this survival mode. And there's going to be a ton of other things that happen. So, I mentioned those four main areas of your metabolism is going to be your resting metabolic rate. And we already talked about how under eating is going to affect that. The next thing that it's going to affect is you are not going to be doing as many movements throughout the day. You will automatically start fidgeting less. These are things you don't notice, right? No one notices that they fidget. I notice that I talk with my hands when I'm talking about these neat movements. But day to day, you're not really actually recognizing those little fidgets, those little movements, those having the energy to cook, having the energy to clean. Those things aren't your top priority. So when you automatically are eating less, that's another area that's going to drop. Now, let's hit exercise. So you're under eating, you are more likely to feel fatigue. When you are performing your exercise, you are putting yourself at a higher risk of energy or of injury because you have that less energy to be able to perform. So, what I will see is clients who are under eating will then suffer an injury because they're not able to maintain their form throughout their workout because they fatigue faster. And now, on top of that, most likely if they're under eating, a big thing is also nutrient deficiencies. So now we have an injury and we're probably not getting proper nutrients. So we are going to be slow to recover. So now you have a person that's not able to push it in the gym or be able to continue their workouts. So now we've hit that area. So again, we're closing that gap on that calorie deficit by trying to do too much. And then I know we talked about the thermal effect of food, but an obvious one is you're not going to be burning calories to break down food if you're not intaking it. So, really, you're hitting all those four main areas of your metabolism when you're putting yourself at these drastic calorie deficits.
It's why 800 calories and eating so little can be all your body sort of thinks it needs to survive. And there's so many other factors. I love that you touched on, like, even in exercise, like, you're not going to recover as well. So then you're not going to be able to push it in the gym. And while you feel like you're giving 100%, that 100% is a lot less than if you actually fueled appropriately. So there's this weird vicious cycle that we're sort of starting. And I know there's even some other things that happen, like hormone changes, blood flow changes, all these different things that we can see that can negatively impact sort of the whole lifestyle we're trying to create, which ultimately hinders the results that we want.
Yeah, and a big thing too is you are here, and people are always like, I'm here for weight loss. My goal is weight loss. But you got to take that a step further because, yes, while weight loss may be their goal, it truly is fat loss. And to have fat loss means we want to make sure that they are maintaining their muscle mass. And that means protecting that muscle, which means feeding the body appropriately. If you're under eating, your body's going to be turning pretty quickly to your muscles to start burning that as energy so that it can perform those needed functions that we have just to stay alive.
There's nothing more frustrating than being like, I'm putting in so much hard work in the gym and it's not adding up to the results I want. And it's because we might not be fueling appropriately. And so we're hindering our muscle loss, our muscle mass gains. We're, potentially eating so little and feeling so hungry and not seeing the results we want. But there are even other mindset shifts that are happening with all of this that then create, I think, a negative impact and a negative attitude towards dieting, so to speak, even as we progress through. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so a big thing is you are kind of destroying your relationship with food, first of all. Just as an example, so if you take someone that's supposed to be consuming 1,800 calories, and I know this number is going to sound crazy, but I see this number a lot, and you all of a sudden have a person that should be at 1,800 calories, but actually is consuming 800. That's a big difference. But take into account, like, we still want to partake and enjoy fun food. So when you have someone that's at 800 calories, and let's say they want to have a bowl of ice cream that's going to be about 300 calories, all of a sudden they have 500 calories left to try and get all the nutrients that they need. And then you'll have someone who's at 1,800 calories have that 300-calorie bowl of ice cream. Well, they still have 1,500 calories that they can get their nutrients met in. And the struggle is you're comparing yourself. We always say don't compare, but let's be honest, we all do. You're comparing yourself to, well, I had this bowl of ice cream. That person had this bowl of ice cream. I ate way less during the day, but this person's seeing results and I'm not. And that's really can put someone into a tailspin of not only having this major terrible relationship with food, but also the depression that comes with it. And depression is such a huge thing. There's tons of studies that show depression does affect your weight loss. And part of that is going to be the hormones that's going to come into play. A big thing is cortisol is majorly affected when you are putting yourself in a major calorie deficit, and this is just one example. But cortisol is not only going to increase your fat storage, but it is also going to make it so that your body is retaining more water. And it's, of course, it's you're just at a higher level of stress. And we know that people that are at higher levels of stress are more likely to gain weight and, again, to make poor food choices. So even if they're sticking to that 800 calories, the rest of the day may not be nutrient dense at all.
You're not going to sleep as well. You're not going to recover as well. There's so many things that are so interconnected that keep us caught in this vicious cycle. So if someone's like, I think I'm under eating, I'm not losing weight, what would be the first thing you would tell them to do to start making changes today?
So, very first thing is, of course, going to be trying to focus on that caloric intake to increase. So, keeping it simple because your body is going to need an adjustment. And I want to point out too that even if you make that adjustment tomorrow where all of a sudden you're hitting your calorie needs, it can still take time for your hormones to actually be able to come back to where it needs to be. So that's not going to be a fast, I'm doing this, the switch is flipped and all of a sudden your body's like, okay, I know what I'm doing, I know how to produce these hormones. You're going to have to give it time. So I really recommend increasing about 50 to 100 calories a week so that your body becomes accustomed to it. And this can be scary because you can initially have that weight gain, and which is even more frustrating when you're like, this is not why I'm here. I want to be trying to lose weight. You can have that initial weight gain, but in the long run, you're going to be able to have that weight loss occur. So, a big thing, of course, is always going to be focusing on the protein intake while we increase your calories. And a part of that does have to do with the thermal effect of food. It's another way just so that your body knows that it's getting calories, but you're also still kind of being able to burn more calories just through the digestion of the protein. So that's going to be the main thing, is just slowly amping it up and just trusting the process, understanding that yes, even if you're gaining right now, we are setting you up so you are going to be losing down the road. You're not going to be hitting this major plateau or even gaining more weight back because your body's not going to be fighting you so much in your weight loss later down the road.
And as tempting as it is, you don't want to start exercising more when you're doing this, even though you might see that scale increase. While you might want to go out for a walk and get moving and focus on different sleep habits or different stress habits, you need to be conscious that if you end up just trying to train more, you're again going to be putting that same stress, creating that same sort of extreme deficit situation that leads to lackluster results.
Yeah, and this is something that even if a client's not isn't coming in necessarily under eating, if they have been in with us for a while and they've had that body recomposition occur where they do have more muscle, all of a sudden they may be like, hey, I hit a plateau, but you can see that body recomp. You can see kind of more muscle definition, or the client will report that they're lifting heavier weights or being able to do extra sets. Most likely it is because muscle does burn more than fat. So sometimes when they've had these body recomp occur, they are opening themselves up to that calorie deficit again because of the more muscle that they have put on. So we do need to even add more calories for them so they're not seeing that plateau. I always tell people when it comes to weight loss and staying in a calorie deficit, you really need to be kind of a ninja. You have to kind of sneak up on your body and do it in a way that your body is not being surprised or being stressed out. It needs to really be, that 200, 300 calorie deficit where your body isn't feeling like, oh, what are you doing to me? Hold on, put the brakes on. We need to make sure that we are getting adequate enough so that we can still function. It's really got to be this slower process, which is why I always tell people too, if weight loss was all that you cared about and it was a month-long thing, yeah, I could put you on a major deficit. And at the beginning, you'd see great results. But after that 30-day mark, your body is really going to start screaming at you and saying, this isn't right. Something's not how it should be. And that's why we see fad diets that constantly fail, where people are constantly losing the same 10 pounds.
And it gets harder and harder because we've created those metabolic adaptations. We've lost muscle mass in that process of trying to lose quickly, which then again hinders us from having that higher resting metabolic rate. We've caused hormone changes. We've done all these different things that make it harder each subsequent time. So really, today is the day to break that pattern. Follow those tips of increasing your calories by just 50 to 100 week over week. Understand that the scale might go up, focus on protein, but embrace that process because it really will set you up for long-term success.
Absolutely, yes.
let's talk about greens. And yes, supplements are always supplemental. But let's face it, many of us do have gaps in our nutrition no matter how clean we'd like to eat. Part of this is the actual bioavailability of the micronutrients from the foods we eat, and part of this is the fact that most of us live busy lives and we can't always prep the fresh foods every second of the day that we would like to prep. There's always more we also could be including, especially as we get older, and often we need to increase our intake of certain things to help our body better utilize it. So that's why I want to take some time to touch on greens. Now, you might be thinking, but I like vegetables. And honestly, I do too. I can't really think of any vegetables I don't like except for green bell peppers, which is a whole nother story. And I think partly due to Ryan making a chili that I didn't like. But anyway, at first when I was considering supplements and Ryan wanted to test out greens, I was like, why would we do that? I have never liked green smoothies. And honestly, I'd never done green powders. They slightly made me shudder, and I'm not fully sure why, but they did. But he mentioned that it was a great way for people to make sure they get plenty of micronutrients they need. I honestly think selfishly, Ryan, just because he has a love-hate relationship with vegetables, wanted them for himself. He has this great habit of eating his vegetables before he actually eats his meal when he's cooking his meal so that he doesn't have to eat them with the meal. But I'm basically an advocate of anything that will fill those gaps so that we can feel our best and make our lifestyle truly sustainable and balanced. So I dove into the research to make my decision on whether or not we would have a greens powder. And while I still do believe that real fruits and vegetables, fresh or frozen, are the best, I think a daily dose of greens can help us make sure we're getting what we need, especially during times of life that are extra busy and we're not able to hit the minimum. It can really help and be beneficial. So, what are greens powders? While each blend of greens will include different things, they generally include a diversity of dried leafy greens and other vegetables, grasses, high antioxidant fruits, roots, and herbs. Seaweed and algae can also be added, and I'll dive into seaweed or dulse a bit later. Probiotics and digestive enzymes are often added as well. And of course, there are personal touches people may include in their blends, like even bee pollen, which we did add in as it contains many vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, making it incredibly healthy. Studies have linked bee pollen and its compounds to health benefits such as decreased inflammation, as well as improved immunity. It can help mitigate some of those menopausal symptoms and even aid in wound healing. Basically, these greens powders pack a micronutrient punch that can be beneficial when striving for those 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, especially if you don't enjoy veggies that much or you have some picky eaters in your family. So what are the benefits of this micronutrient packed punch? Let's dive in and really go back to the exact reasons why we want to eat more leafy greens. We want to make sure not only our macros are dialed in, but also our micros. And honestly, I find having this bonus of a greens powder as we learn to tweak our macros to be extra helpful to make sure that we're maintaining balance. So diving into the different benefits. First, they fill the nutritional gaps. It's hard to consistently get a diversity of fruits and vegetables, even if we buy things frozen so they won't go bad. That can make prep hard, especially when we're busy and on the go. So this can help us cover those gaps that might pop up, especially if we're only able to eat specific fruits and vegetables consistently. We can fill these gaps and we can help our body function optimally, which is why we see extra benefits when we do include more micronutrients in our diet. It isn't that it's like some magic pill, it's just that our body needs these micronutrients to create optimal balance. When we think about it too, the green tea or matcha often included in greens is a natural energy boost. The spirulina, beets, and bee pollen also aid in reducing fatigue and increasing energy levels. And in terms of boosting your immune system, greens powder pack a vitamin and mineral punch. They're often extra high in vitamin E, which is a powerful antioxidant and critical to your immune system. In terms of aiding in digestion, it isn't just the probiotic blends that offer benefit. The grasses included also contain digestive enzymes to help. And by getting enough of those vitamins and minerals and even a hefty dose of antioxidants, we can improve our overall health and manage our blood pressure, our blood sugar levels, and improve our overall health. Because our body is also functioning optimally, and specifically because of one ingredient I'm going to go over in just a second, you could also see an improvement in your thyroid functioning and weight loss results. Not to mention, this antioxidant benefit may help you manage those symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. But before I really dive into who may benefit from including greens in their diet, I want to touch on this ingredient first. So, what is dulse? Dulse is a red seaweed that has been popular in Europe for years. If you're a plant-based eater, it's been called the vegan bacon, and it's even been called the new kale since it has twice the nutritional value of kale. It's naturally fat-free and is a great source of calcium. Dulse has been shown to strengthen bones and protect joints and connective tissues. It's also packed with antioxidants that can protect our cells from free radical damage. And it promotes thyroid health. It contains high levels of iodine, which can promote proper thyroid functioning. And poor thyroid functioning puts us at risk for weight gain, muscular weakness, depression, and fatigue. So if you're finding that you're doing everything right, you've dialed in your macros and your workouts, and you feel like your body just isn't fully responding, it may be really time to focus on that micronutrient intake. So the question is, are greens right for you? So who would greens benefit? I have a long list for you on the screen because I basically think that while no one actually needs it and we can get all of the micronutrients we need from whole natural foods, it also will benefit just about everybody. As I mentioned, I love vegetables, but I still see a real big benefit from including it, especially when I'm on the go and busy. And honestly, because our greens taste so delicious, it adds extra flavor to things. But I think it's one of these things that can really help us get that extra boost and make life easier. If you're busy and questioning if you're hitting your macros, think about including it. It's just that extra punch. If you don't like vegetables, even if you're trying to work on it and hide veggies and things, again, it makes sure that you actually hit your micronutrient needs. I actually think it's a really good thing for endurance athletes to include as well when they're really training intensely and upping their mileage. Not only because it makes sure that their body is functioning optimally when they already have their macros dialed in, but because most greens also contain beetroot. And because of the nitrates, beetroot has been shown to help reduce fatigue and improve endurance. I think greens can also be extra helpful during perimenopause and menopause, especially when you feel like nothing is working and you're adjusting your macros and your workouts. During menopause and perimenopause, inflammation levels often rise and oxidative stress increases, making a diet rich in antioxidants super, super key. These antioxidants can also boost mood and help reduce anxiety, which is a win-win. And if you're wanting to recover faster, increasing your protein intake and supplementing with more antioxidants and even things like collagen can help aid in getting your body what it needs to repair. So now the question is, how do you use it? So if you're thinking, I want to try it, but how the heck do I include this? The great part is you can throw in green powders to almost anything. I like it in smoothies, in my oatmeal, I put it in my protein shakes, I bake it into energy bites or balls. You can even put it in Greek yogurt or non-dairy yogurts, and that's a great go-to. If you're looking to increase your water, you can actually even just put in your water. Well, at least ours, because I think ours is super, super tasty with the apple fritter. But you can even just drink it with water and then increase your water intake for the day if you do struggle to get enough water. I find it personally helps me. So I would love to hear how you include your greens powders and if you use one in your diet. And if you haven't tried one yet, I have to have a shameless plug for ours. It is freaking delicious and you can put in all those different things. And I'd love to hear if you're using our greens, how you're actually using them. Often when people are designing workouts or see movements I've shared, they say how many reps and sets. But it doesn't just have to be counting reps, especially with our strength work. We can actually do interval work that's really, really helpful. If you are listening, I have some video demonstrations of some of the different ways we cheat and why intervals can be really key, so make sure to check them out. But in terms of using intervals, often when we do reps and sets, we can have a tendency to rush through. When we include interval work instead, and where we have that time that we actually have to just keep moving for, we can slow down and be a little bit more intentional with movements. I notice this a lot when it's certain exercises that we want to rush through that we're more unstable with. So if you think about the renegade rows, right? If you just want to complete the reps because you got 8 reps, you might start to rotate, right? You're not going it slowly. Versus if you know you just have to last the minute, you're going to be more willing to take that time, focus on fighting that rotation, slowing everything down. So especially with moves we tend to want to rush through, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, using intervals can be really key. It can also help us push past failure. Say you're doing a movement like a pull through with a weight, right? And you fatigue at a certain number of reps, you're moving super slow, trying to be intentional. When you have intervals, you might come down, pause for a second, then go back to doing it. Versus with the reps, you'd be like, okay, I'm tired, and you would stop there. So intervals can sometimes help us push past failure. They can help us slow down with movements. They can also help us stay intentional with the exercises we're including. A lot of times when we're doing an exercise, we start to lose that mind-body connection, and we also start to just count reps. Because if you're like me, sometimes you can't multitask, right? But we can lose that focus on what we actually feel working. So when it's an interval and we don't have to worry about it, we can just stay focused on what do I actually feel working. When you're doing a push-up, instead of trying to count the reps, 1, 2, right? You can say, okay, do I feel that tension down in that ground? Do I feel my shoulder blades move away as I press back up? Do I feel them come together as I lower down? We can start to stay internally focused instead of having to count the reps. So while we often turn to reps and sets when we're doing our strength work, consider including some interval work in your routine to help you stay intentional with the training, focus on what you feel working, maybe even force yourself to get out a few more reps than you would otherwise, and to really slow down and stabilize over just rushing through to get the reps done. So if you've been using intervals, let me know how they're working out for you. If you haven't yet, let me know how you're going to use intervals in your strength work coming up. So I want to talk about aging well, and I want to talk about doing that mind-body work, working on our neuromuscular control. If you are listening, don't hesitate to check out the video for video demonstrations of some of the silly things I'm about to do. But I was thinking about this when I was actually working with Mike on doing some boxing work. And, I'm all like, all right, wah, fighting, orthodox stance, my traditional stance. And he's like, okay, let's do southpaw. And I am a very right-hand dominant person, very dominant side dominant person. And all of a sudden I go to the other side and I'm like, oh no, how does this work? And you're punching and you're doing these things and you're like, this feels so awkward, okay? I felt so uncoordinated, like more uncoordinated than I felt in a very long time. And as I left, I started to think about how important this really is. Not only is getting comfortable, being uncomfortable in a new way very important for us, but often as we get older, we avoid those explosive movements, we avoid those balance movements, we avoid those coordination challenges because they make us feel so awkward. And we don't like being bad at things, myself included, but these things are even more key for us to include. Often as we get older, we focus on the strength losses, right? We think I need to build strength, it keeps my bones healthy, I need to be stronger to avoid falls and fractures. But it's not just strength we need to work on. It's that mind-body connection, because that coordination, that ability to react quickly is actually what helps us avoid injury. So doing things where you take, the dominant way you usually done stuff and then switch directions, while it seems like a simple swap, it's creating those new neural pathways. It's challenging your mind to have to recruit your body and the muscles in a different way than it usually has. And that neuromuscular efficiency, the ability to recruit the correct muscles at the correct times and the correct sequences as quickly as we really need them, is so key. It's why if you've been avoiding things like the agility ladder, new movements, hybrid movements, movements that test your coordination, things like explosive movements like, jumping even, right? We avoid these things because they're uncomfortable, they're awkward, but they're so important. While we want to slow movements down to really master them, to create more time under tension, to potentially build muscle, we don't want to fear speeding things up. Because even like with the boxing, I'll do it and I'll have different things that he's making me do, and I'll slow them down, right, to learn them. But at some point, if I actually want that to translate to everyday life, if I really want to be able to react quickly, I need to speed it back up. It's why we can't just do a slow squat. We have to consider some explosive movements. Because if we aren't able to react quickly and respond, that's not going to pay off the way we want in everyday life. So if you've been avoiding awkward movements, balance movements, all those different things, I really encourage you to test them out. Are you going to feel silly? Did I feel even silly demoing that right now? Yes, okay. It's one of those things that's going to be uncomfortable, but it's so important to help us keep our mind and body young and healthy. What things are you taking on that have felt uncomfortable that will challenge you so that you can really improve your power, your reaction time to age functionally well? Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Fitness Hacks podcast. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways.